Hello friends and welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're going to make a cheese hamburger potato casserole. So what you see on my counter is what we're going to use to make this. There's really not a lot of ingredients involved, but I gotta tell you, this makes such a great casserole. So I was playing around the other day. I wanted potatoes, I wanted some cheese, I wanted something different, and I had some ground beef, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna play with this and come up with something really wickedly good. And I did, because this actually has the best taste when it's made up, and I was amazed when it came out and I put it in my mouth the first time. I was like, this is it. So this is a wonderful thing, and if you're trying to please your family, this just might work for you. So we're going to take a medium onion and we're going to cut it into small pieces. We don't want really huge ones in this because we want to make sure that, one, they cook up really well, but two, they don't overpower what we're eating. So go ahead and cut them up as small as you want to, just don't leave big hunks. And then once they're cut up, break them up, because we want to make sure that these cook up really well in our pan when we put them into the skillet to actually fry them at first. So make sure they're all broken. And once we get this done, we're going to move on to our skillet, which we're putting in at least 2 tablespoons of olive oil and bringing in those onions. Now we're going to cook them for anywhere from like 3.5–4 minutes before we do anything else, just to get these on their way to being cooked, because we really want them done. So go ahead and move them around the pan, get them coated with that oil because it's going to help them cook. And as you go through this, just move them around a little bit from time to time to make sure they're cooked completely. And then we're going to clear a spot in the middle of our pan because we're going to bring in our ground beef, and we have 1 pound of ground beef going into this. So go ahead, put it in there. We're going to break it up, get it started cooking. And as it cooks, we're going to add the onions in and mix them through the ground beef as it's browning, because we want to give the ground beef the flavor of the onions as well. And it's something that's kind of important to the flavor of the whole thing. So break that up really well. And then make sure you get this on medium-high heat, and we are adding at least a teaspoon of steak seasoning to this, because that's going to actually punch the flavor for all the seasoning that's in the steak seasoning. Then go ahead and mix that through, and we're going to let this cook as we go along just to get this browned up completely. But make sure those onions are totally mixed through this, so that way everything is working together to make the ground beef taste as good as it possibly can. Just from time to time, make sure that you move this around your pan and stir it and move it to where it actually browns on all sides. Now we have 2 blocks of cheese here. We have 1 mozzarella and 1 mild cheddar. They're just the standard 8-ounce blocks, and we're going to shred these. And the point of shredding the cheese instead of getting it out of a bag is bagged cheese doesn't melt well. It's got like a really low moisture point. We don't want that. But when you do it with this is the kind of cheese you get where it's going to be like stretchy and stringy and really good and gooey. And that's kind of what we want it to be. We don't want like all dried out cheese that doesn't do anything for you. So we're going to go ahead and shred this up. Go ahead and do each one of these, and we're using all of this. So total 16 ounces of cheese is going in here. You know, this is basically a couple of cups of cheese, but it's going to help this stuff so much to where there's going to be so much flavor from the cheese and the hamburger and everything else going to the ground beef. It's just so wicked. And put that up with potatoes. Oh yeah. So shred this until you get it completely done, and then we're going to sit it to the side after we get it shredded, because we're going to start actually making our sauce up pretty soon for this to go in with the ground beef. So once your ground beef is totally browned and your onions are cooked and everything, we're going to remove these from the pan for just a few minutes. So set them aside in, like, you know, a bowl or plate or whatever you want to put them on, and we're going to let them sit while we go on to the next step, because we're going to make a roux, and then we're going to add the cheese to it to make a cheese sauce. So go ahead and spoon this all out. Now, when you're getting this out, you want to leave the oil in the pan, because that's something we're going to be using in a second. So use a slotted spoon. Make sure you get out all of the ground beef and onions that you can. Now, if a few pieces of onion or beef stay in here, it really doesn't matter. That's not a big deal. Just do the best you can to get the most of it out. And as you can see, with a slotted spoon, the best thing is a lot of the oil drains down as you're picking these up, so you don't have to worry about taking all of that out of there. So keep going until you get it to this point. Make sure that oil stays in. And then we're going to add in at least 2 tablespoons of butter to this, and we're going to melt it down. So make sure that it totally is melted before we move on to the next step. And once we get it to the melted point we want, we're going to add about 3 tablespoons of flour to this, and that's going to mix in with the oil and the butter and everything else that was still left in the pan. And we're going to cook this for about 2 minutes to get that flavor out from the flour, because you don't want this tasting like flour. So go ahead and mix it about, let it do its thing, let it cook, and then we're going to bring in 2 cups of milk. Now mind you, we're not putting all the milk in at first. We're going to put in maybe like a half a cup, mix it through what's in the pan. Then once we get that mixed in a bit, bring in another half a cup, mix it through, and then after you get this really mixed up and it's actually kind of smooth and it's consistent, then we're going to bring in the rest of the milk. And we're just going to keep stirring this. And at this point, you need this on a medium-high heat to get this pan really hot, because that way that's going to help this thicken up. So we're going to stir it till it thickens. This is going to take a few minutes. It's not going to be a quick thing, but just keep mixing it and doing it. And then we're going to add in about a teaspoon of salt and a half a teaspoon of pepper to this. So go ahead and mix those through as you're stirring and let it keep thickening. And once this gets to a point where it's really thickened, we're going to add in our cheese. So keep going. And then when you add your cheese to this, this is how you're going to have your cheese sauce. It's going to like bind everything together, because this is going to be the best tasting cheese sauce, but it works for this. Now see, mine thickened up, so I'm going to bring in the cheese now. And the cool thing is, you see it's hot and bubbling like this, that's going to help this cheese melt. And that's just going to be everything you need to get this going. So once your cheese is in, start stirring it, and you're going to see it start to melt almost instantly. So as you do this, you're trying to work to a point where all these pieces of cheese are totally broken down into the mix. And this is going to take probably like 3 minutes or so. But just keep stirring it until you get to that point, because we don't want like any thick pieces of the cheese left over. We want it all actually stretched out and mixed through the roux to where it's actually your cheese sauce. So as you can see, mine is really breaking down really well, and I'm going to bring in my ground beef and my onions back into this and continue to mix it until they're distributed all the way through the whole pan. So that way everything has a good even mix to it. So at some point right about now, you probably need to preheat your oven to 400 degrees. And then we're going to spray a large baking dish that we're going to put this in, and I do mean a large one. And we're going to take our potatoes and cut them up. Now I have 5 potatoes here. They're about medium size or so. And we're going to cut these up and layer them across the bottom of the pan. So that way all of the bottom is coated before we do anything else with this. Because we're going to do this in layers. We're going to have potatoes. We're going to do the cheese sauce with the ground beef. Then we're going to do some more potatoes and then more cheese sauce with ground beef. And it's going to actually layer up to where it's evenly distributed throughout the whole pan that we're cooking in. So go ahead and add these in. Now, when you get them in there enough to do this, you're going to actually just take a large spoon and spoon this across the top of the potatoes. Because once we get enough in there to cover them, and we're not trying to use the whole thing yet, we're just going to use about half of it. And we're going to move this back and forth until it works across all of the potatoes. So it really doesn't take a whole lot of the sauce to do this, but there's plenty of this for going 2 full layers. So go ahead and move them around, then slice up the rest of your potatoes and put them on top, and then bring in the rest of your cheese sauce with the ground beef. And we're going to go all the way across the top of this. Now, when this goes into your oven, 400 degrees, it's going to be in there about 55-60 minutes, something like that. And you want to check it to see if it started to brown on top. And make sure that oven is hot before you put this in, because that's the key to making this cook through on all these potatoes. And once this is all put across the top of here, you'll be ready to put it in your oven. So go ahead and spread this around. Make sure the potatoes are pretty much covered across the top, because we don't want them exposed that much. And when it comes back from the oven, it will look like this. And I gotta tell you, this is so amazing. But let it cool before you try to eat it, because this cheese is gonna be hot. But I loved it. I brought this out. It had the little brown spots on top where it cooked really well with the cheese, and it was bubbling, and it just was something that looked so good. And I was so ready to eat it the minute it came out, and I had to remind myself it had to cool. But this is an amazing thing to have for dinner, lunch, or whatever. But it's enough to feed a family, because, you know, there's quite a lot in this. It's just the right amount to make everybody happy and give everybody something they'll like. So if you like ground beef, cheese, you got it. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out the Southern Mountain Kitchen website, where you can get a free recipe, check out the cookbooks available from the Southern Mountain Kitchen, and if you'd like to, you could order a cookbook at a discounted price, cheaper than Amazon, with shipping that is also cheaper than Amazon. So if you get a chance, check it out, and I hope you have a great day.